Joining us now to talk about them and the importance of voting yes on both, the man whose organization has really been leading the charge in setting people straight on what the amendments actually mean and what they would actually do, Rick Esenberg of the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. From a good government perspective, and I have been sort of attacking this on Governor Evers essentially running a COVID-19 slush fund. But from a purely good government perspective, why is voting yes the only answer for both conservatives and liberals alike who care about the state constitution and the separation of powers?
Well, if you look at our constitutional system, it has lots of separations of power. It has lots of checks and balances because the people who wrote it were distrustful of concentrating power in one set of hands. Now, I would argue that our current Constitution requires legislative approval of the way in which the governor uses federal funds that aren't earmarked for some specific thing. But the legislature has given him this sort of across-the-board authorization. I would argue that that's an unconstitutional delegation of authority by the legislature. The legislature has not only the right to approve, it has the duty to approve. And these amendments are nothing more than an attempt to restore these checks and balances, to limit the concentration of power in one set of hands. And they really are pro-democratic, and they will apply no matter who is the governor and no matter which party controls the legislature.
And that is something that I think everybody can understand, that what this is about is sharing power. Now, we have faced a whole lot of what I would consider to be deliberate misinformation about this, that somehow a no vote would be the thing that returns power to both political branches of government. Well, I guess technically the judicial branch is another political branch, but to the legislature and to the executive. How have you been combating that misinformation and sort of setting people straight that a no vote actually just keeps power concentrated in the hands of one man?
Well, I think in just the way that I described it, what a yes vote will do will be to reaffirm, if you want to say that, restore, if you want to say that, but certainly make sure that when the state is faced with a decision about how to spend what might be billions of dollars in unrestricted federal aid, that decision will be made by both the people's elected representatives in the legislature and the governor. This is not about a power grab. This is about a power share, one that I think can already be found in our Constitution, but which is certainly consistent with the way in which our Constitution handles the exercise of power and the spending of money. The legislature appropriates money. The governor can certainly veto its appropriations. The legislature can then override, but this is a sharing of power, and that is characteristic of so many ways in which our Constitution operates on both the federal and the state level.
State constitution is very clear about this. In the 1930s, the legislature decided to, in the name of getting more quickly Great Depression aid from the federal government to the people, it abdicated its own authority to the governor, and that sort of worked, I'm not going to say just fine, because our shared power system was out of whack. But this really didn't become a massive issue until, for lack of a better phrase, Governor Evers really did start running a slush fund. I mean, there were questions for years about why he wasn't spending the billions of dollars that were coming in federal aid for COVID-19. And then once he started spending it, it was spent on pretty much anything but COVID relief. $9 million for a soccer stadium in Milwaukee, $15 million for a conference center in Janesville. And then in late 2022, we get the audit from the Legislative Audit Bureau saying they had no accounting of how that money was spent, and they didn't provide any actual rationale for deciding how that money was spent. So in a very real sense, this would be stopping a power grab, Rick, that has been going on right now. And we still have, what, $1.8 billion of COVID aid that is sitting there earning interest in an account that Governor Evers quite literally does think is his own personal slush fund that doesn't need to be returned to the state treasury.
Right, and that's exactly what you would expect when you have a system which concentrates the power to spend billions of dollars in one set of hands. We elect governors. We hope they're competent. We hope they're good people, but we don't expect them to be saints. And the reason that we have a system of checks and balances and of shared power among the branches is to prevent basically the occasion of political sin. We are requiring our governor and our legislature to get together and to agree on how this money would be spent, and that makes it much less likely that this money will be turned into kind of a political slush fund because there will be input from all sides.
Do you agree with my assessment that Governor Evers has used this money as a slush fund?
Oh, absolutely. I think that that's true.
I mean, it just, the thing I don't get, Rick, is, I understand political opposition and the governor and his people really pushing hard to keep said slush fund. But all of the Democrats who at least profess to care about democracy and good, honest government, who are engaging in such blatant disinformation to try to get these amendments defeated, have they not contemplated the possibility that a Republican could win the governorship and do the exact same thing? I mean, this is the thing. Like, there are political issues and there are constitutional issues that, can be debated and should be debated. And I will concede that there are good arguments to be made on other sides of things that you and I advocate for. To me, there does not seem to be a good argument against voting yes on these amendments.
No, I think that the opposition here has been, on the one hand, you could say that they've been very, very short-sighted, right? They look at this as a partisan issue because Tony Evers is currently the governor of the state of Wisconsin. What I say in response to that is, look, you may love Governor Evers. You may love what he did with this money, but I guarantee you that there will be more money in the future, and there may at that time be a governor who you do not like. And you will not want that governor to have this unilateral power. So you need to think in the long term. But I think if you look a little bit underneath this, special interests tend to love the concentration of power because it allows them easier access to the decision maker. It allows them to attempt to influence these decisions without a great deal of public input or scrutiny. So, I think if you look at who's for this and who's against this, I think who's for it are people who tend to think that they will benefit from having this single point of distribution that can be easily politically manipulated and basically urged to turn these monies into the kind of slush fund that you described, and which has happened with respect to Governor Evers and the pandemic relief monies.
Rick Esenberg is the president of the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. Rick, thank you so much for all the work that your group and you personally have done to try to get people to understand this issue. Admittedly, it's not worded in plain English. Us lawyers have a remarkable ability to make things way more complicated than they need to be. But I do appreciate all the work you and your organization have done. Get out there, vote yes on both amendments. Rick Esenberg, thank you so much.